From Kevin Garnett using trash talk to scare his opponents to the dreaded Shaq attack that struck terror into even the toughest players, here are the most feared NBA players of all time. Let's start with the GOAT, Michael Jordan. Now for starters, MJ was just that good. There was no reason for players to not be scared of him. He had an unmatched skill set that made him nearly impossible to guard, and his ability to perform under pressure was unparalleled. But it wasn't just his skill that made him so feared. It was also his intense competitiveness. Jordan had a killer instinct that would come out in full force during games. He was known for trash talking his opponents and doing whatever it took to win. In fact, he would often go to extreme lengths to get inside his opponent's head, including creating imaginary rivalries just to motivate himself. One of the most memorable examples of Jordan's competitiveness was during the 1992 NBA Finals. In Game 1, he put up 35 points in the first half alone, hitting 6 three-pointers in the process. He famously shrugged his shoulders after the third one, as if to say, "I don't know how I'm doing this." It was a performance for the ages, and showed just how dominant he could be. Overall, it's easy to see why Michael Jordan was one of the most feared players in NBA history. He was a fierce competitor with an unmatched skill set and an incredible drive to win. Whether he was putting up 35 points in a half or playing through the flu, he always found a way to come out on top. And while we're on the subject of scary players getting in their opponents' heads, how can we not talk about Patrick Beverley? Pat is a guy who talks a lot of smack on the court, but sometimes he can't back it up with his play. Instead, he relies on his mouth to try and intimidate his opponents. He's known for being a bit of a bully and making some wild statements about other NBA players. You might remember when he took out Russell Westbrook during the 2013 playoffs. It was a brutal collision that left Westbrook with a torn meniscus. But now, Beverley and Westbrook are actually teammates on the LA Lakers, and they're good friends. And even though they're on good terms, that incident has still scarred many players and fans alike. Some people might think that Beverley's behavior is unsportsmanlike, but he's not afraid to do whatever it takes to gain an advantage over his opponents. And that's precisely what scares the rest so much. So even if he doesn't always follow through with his talk, his ability to get inside his opponents' heads makes him one of the most intimidating players in the league. But if there's one star who knows how to trash talk and back it up, it's Kevin Garnett, also known as the Big Ticket. Kev was one of the most feared players in the NBA. He had an elite level of trash talking and competitiveness that reminded many of Larry Bird, a legend in his own right. KG knew he was better than most players he faced and used that to his advantage, often getting inside their heads with his words. But KG's impact on the game wasn't just limited to his trash talking. He was an incredible all-around player, dominating on both ends of the floor as a scorer, passer, rebounder, and defender. He won the Defensive Player of the Year award and made 12 all-defensive teams, showing just how dominant he was on that end of the court. One of the things that made Garnett so feared was his ability to demoralize his opponents. He was relentless in his pursuit of greatness and always wanted to back up his words with his play. Whether he was the MVP player for the Minnesota Timberwolves or a defensive stopper for the Boston Celtics, Garnett left an indelible mark on the game as one of the greatest power forwards of all time. His ability to dominate on both ends of the floor, his elite trash talking and competitiveness, and the way he would completely break his opponents makes him one of the 10 most legendary players in the league. And something similar could be said about Stephen Curry. Steph may not have the size of other NBA giants, but his shooting ability is truly something to be feared. At just 6'2" and 185 pounds, Curry can shoot the ball from practically anywhere on the court, often putting up shots that defy physics. Alongside his teammate Klay Thompson, Curry can quickly build a lead for the Golden State Warriors that can be hard for other teams to catch up to. It's not just his shooting ability that sets Curry apart, but the way he completely changed the game of basketball. Teams are now constantly trying to replicate what he and the Warriors do on the court. And it's not just his opponents who are afraid of him. Even his teammates sometimes can't believe what he's he's capable of. Curry is also the all-time leader in three-pointers made, and his shooting has become so influential that teams are now copying his style of play. With his continued success, Curry is proving to be one of the greatest shooters of all time, and a true force to be reckoned with on the court. However, he's still leagues behind from being the most feared NBA player of all time. Like, just look at the kind of competition he has ahead of him. First, there's Ron Artest, aka Meta World Peace, has certainly had his fair share of struggles with anger management. But let's be clear, we're not here to make light of his admirable journey toward better mental health. However, during his time as Ron Artest, he was, without a doubt, one of the most intimidating figures in basketball. Not only did he have impressive physical prowess, but he also had an edge to him that would make any opponent feel uneasy. There was just something about him that set him apart from other players. Maybe it was his imposing demeanor, or maybe it was the fact that you knew he was always on the edge of boiling over. And unfortunately, that edge boiled over in the infamous Malice at the Palace. After some fans started throwing cups and debris at him during a game, Ron completely lost it and ran into the stands to fight them. It was a total disaster and left a huge black mark on the league's reputation. But it also cemented Artest's place on this list of the most feared NBA players. Thankfully, he has since sought help for his anger management issues and has made great strides in his journey toward better mental health. But there's no denying that during his Ron Artest days, he was one of the most intimidating and feared players in the league. Well, second only to Shaquille O'Neal. Oh boy, when it comes to Shaq, fear is an understatement. This guy was a total monster on the court, and he knew it. I mean, just look at him. At 7'1" and 320 pounds, he was a physical specimen. And when he got the ball in the paint, defenders everywhere would tremble in fear. But don't let his intimidating presence fool you. Shaq was a total goofball off the court, and everyone loved him for it. But on the court, he was all business. He won 3 straight NBA titles and 3 Finals MVPs with the Los Angeles Lakers. And between 2000 and 2002, he was simply unstoppable. We're talking about one of the most dominant players of all time here. Even as a rookie, Shaq was a force to be reckoned with. He won the Rookie of the Year award by putting up over 23 points and almost 14 rebounds per game. And let's not forget about his legendary dunking ability and that deadly hook shot of his. I mean, there are so many examples of Shaq's Shaq attacks throughout his career, but one that fans can't forget is from the 2000 NBA Finals, when he dunked over Indiana Pacers center Rick Smits and sent him flying to the floor. It was a play that showed just how dominant and physically imposing Shaq was on the court. Sure, Shaq had his flaws. His free throw shooting was never great, and he sometimes struggled to stay in shape. But when it comes to the sheer fear factor, there's no one quite like the Big Diesel. Anyway, that's all I had on the most feared NBA players of all time.